of Parashat Vayetze, we talked about what happens more towards the end of the parasha, or what made Yaakov decide that it's time to leave Lavan's home. We know that Rivka told him, you have to wait there until I call you, but she doesn't call him, and he decides to get up and leave Lavan's home.
Yeah, we saw it's a little confusing because we see several reasons, but we also see that Hashem told him to leave, which seems that would be enough of a reason. If Hashem tells him to leave, he should get up and leave. So what is all the rest going on there? What's the story with Lavan's sons and Lavan's space? How does that add to our understanding of what's going on?
Exactly. When the Torah brings different reasonings, you have to ask, okay, what is the real reason? We know that if HaKadosh Baruch Hu says something, just like you're saying, that's enough. So why does the Torah add on to it? Why does the Torah build up to it? There's also this reason, and also that reason. What is the reason behind Yaakov Avinu going home back to Eretz Yisrael? And more importantly, what incredibly important message do these psukim have for us today in our time with the battles that are going on in the world, with the battle that's going on here in Eretz Yisrael? Hope you enjoy it. Take a look. So it's 7th Parsha of Sefer Bereshit, Parashat Vayetze, the end of the 7th week of the war here in Eretz Yisrael. This week, I want to talk about when Yaakov leaves the house of Lavan. Last year, we discussed the fact that in this week's Parasha, Yaakov runs away. Not in the beginning of the Parsha, which starts with the word Vayetze, which means to leave, but at the end of the Parsha, where there we see time and time again the Torah saying that Yaakov runs away. Just before the Torah tells us that Yaakov runs away from Lavan at the end of the Parsha, the Torah first tells us that Yaakov starts to notice things which are a little bit different in his life over there by Lavan. First of all, like we mentioned last year, Yaakov wants to leave Lavan's home, and then Lavan says to him, hey, why are you leaving? Why don't you stay? Let's make a deal. Let's cut a deal. Make some money. Make something for yourself. And Yaakov does that. And then the Torah tells us that Yaakov made a lot of money. He became very wealthy with a lot of cattle. And right after that, the Torah continues to tell us that Yaakov then hears Lavan's son talk about him behind his back, or maybe not even behind his back, but talk about him saying that everything he has, he took from their father, and all this wealth, all this honor that he has, all this kavod, as the Torah says, that he has, comes from Lavan. And after hearing that, Yaakov then notices, then sees that Pnei Lavan, the face of Lavan, is not the same. Then on top of these, the Torah tells us that HaKadosh Baruch Hu tells him, now you have to leave back home. And then Yaakov goes to Rachel and Leah, calls them out to the field, and tells them that he sees that Lavan is not what he used to be. He's not treating him the same. And just so you should know also, Lavan never treated me nicely, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu is the one who told me now to go back to Eretz Yisrael. And then Rachel and Leah agree to go back to Eretz Yisrael. And you really have to ask, when you see these psukim over there, what is this all about? What is the reason that Yaakov decides to go back to Eretz Yisrael? Is it hearing the way Lavan's sons are talking about him? Is it seeing that Lavan is changing his manner towards him? What happened in Lavan's manner? What changed in Lavan that made Yaakov notice something is different? Or is it because HaKadosh Baruch Hu tells him to leave? It seems that this is the most important reason. If HaKadosh Baruch Hu tells him to go back, then he should go back. So why is the Torah building it up this way? What is the Torah trying to tell us about these different reasonings for Yaakov Avinu heading back to Eretz Yisrael?
Yeah, I agree. You know, if Avram Avinu can go to the Akedah just because Hashem said, Yaakov Avinu can go home just because Hashem said. What do we need all the rest? But I think if we look carefully, there are two things happening. One is Yaakov getting up and going home. And as you said, he already wanted to do that a long time. Yaakov getting up and going home is something that he could do because Hashem said, and that's what he's going to do. If Hashem says come home, he's going to come home. But that's not what all this discussion is. The discussion is about is what is Yaakov Avinu going home with? Is he leaving all of this, all of what he made, all of his belongings behind and leaving home, or is he taking it all with him? And it seems this is a critical point, because when Yaakov wanted to leave the first time and Lavan said, no, stay, you should work for me, you should get paid, Yaakov says, I don't want anything. Me'uma, don't give me anything. We'll cut a different deal. You won't pay me anything, and as we know, there's the whole deal, which has changed, as he mentions here, multiple times, what this deal is. But the point is, if Yaakov says, I don't want anything, but then he offers a deal, what's the difference between not getting anything and the deal that he offered? The point is, this is key to understanding it, is that Yaakov, maybe as his grandfather told Sdom, I don't want you saying that you made me rich. I don't want Lavan thinking that what I have, and we'll see this later, that's exactly what Lavan says, but I don't want Lavan Lavan thinking that what I have is his. I want it to be clear that anything I get, that anything I have is really, really from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So I don't even want you to pay me a salary, because the salary you'll think that you're paying. No, I want Hashem. I want the way this cattle is going to be born to be clear that it's Hashem giving me what he's giving me. That is the key point, and this is what Yaakov has in his mind all the time. And then suddenly one day he hears the sons of Lavan saying the opposite. He hears them saying that everything that Yaakov has is actually Lavan's. And not only does he hear that, also Lavan changes his face. Now, Lavan wasn't such a beautiful face until then. He was tricking him the whole time. But as long as it was clear to Lavan that everything Yaakov had was a miracle, was coming from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Yaakov is fine. The minute that changes, that's when there's a breaking point. And maybe this is what he's telling Rachel and Leah. He talks about this dream. Now, we always sort of skip that part. We focus on, okay, he's telling them that he has to go home. But actually, when we saw that earlier, it just said, Hashem says, you should go. And here he gives this whole story where he has a dream and he sees the cattle and he sees them with the marks and with the this. What is all that about? How is that important? Where does that come from? But maybe, based on what we're saying, that's exactly what's going on. The dream is about telling him, listen, everything you see, this is from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. HaKadosh Baruch Hu was the one who made them this way, made them that way. Yeah, you did some trick with the stick. Believe me, that's not what made all of them be what they are. It's Hashem did this for you because Hashem, as the pasuk says there, saw what Lavan was doing for you. And therefore, take all of this. It's yours. And how do I know this? Because Yaakov says straight out, which God spoke to me? The God that I made a vow to. And it's very interesting because the vow wasn't that I promised that I'm going to go home. So if the focus of this dream was the idea of him coming home, that's not in the vow. What was in the vow? That everything you give to me, I'm going to take 1/10 of it and bring it as a sacrifice. Now that is the God that's speaking to me. That vow is what's speaking to me. It's Hashem saying, remember, you were talking about what I'm giving you. I gave it to you. Don't just run away and leave it all behind because you're scared what Lavan's going to say. Please, this is a very interesting word. Hashem turns and says, please, Sana, please look and see that this is yours. This is what I want you to come and leave with. And this explains that word that repeats itself multiple times here. Hitzil me'avinu, vayatzil. The idea of rescuing, what is it talking about? It's not rescuing us. It's talking about that all of your possessions, everything you have was rescued from our father, was rescued from Lavan. Rescue is basically someone who's not supposed to be there, something that's not supposed to be there. Yes, technically it's under you. And as we've spoken about in the past, this word comes from the word sel, shadow. Yes, it's under someone's shadow, but being under someone's shadow doesn't mean it's there. It's under their shadow. It's under somewhat of their control, but it's not theirs. When you're rescuing it, you're basically taking it from where it doesn't belong and bringing it out and rescuing it from there. And this connects us right away to the other place where we see this word is when Am Yisrael leaves Mitzrayim. And Hashem also requests, doesn't command, request, please take out these possessions. Vayenatzlu et Mitzrayim. They rescue these possessions from Egypt and they go out. This isn't a present. This is yours. This is I'm giving you. This belongs to you. This is that other piece that's going on here. Does Yaakov just run away and leave with nothing? Or does he take what Hashem has given him and go with all of that and come back home?
Very good, very good. And picking up on what you just said about Yetziat Mitzrayim, there's an incredible sfono over there. It says something very relevant for there too, which is relevant for us in this week's parasha too, and relevant for us today in what's going on in today's world, what's going on with us today. This phone over there says, first of all, he asked, why does HaKadosh Baruch Hu have to plead with Am Yisrael to take the Rechush Gadol with them, to take with them the wealth? Why does HaKadosh Baruch Hu have to ask them to do so? Why aren't they just taking it with them? And says this phone that Am Yisrael might think to themselves that if they take with them the wealth, then the Egyptians are going to run after them and chase them and then catch up to them and then take them back to Mitzrayim. Basically saying that this is not the reason that they're going to chase you. This is not the reason. This wealth that you are taking is not the reason that the Mitzrayim, that the Egyptians are going to chase you. Taking it back to this week's parasha, to what's going on with Bnei Lavan, with the sons of Lavan, what's going on with Bnei Lavan, with the face of Lavan and Yaakov, is don't think for a second that the reason that they hate you is because the wealth you made. That's not the reason. Yaakov hears Bnei Lavan talking. He hears them saying that everything he has, he took from our father. Everything he has made for himself, all this honor is because our father. But we know the truth. We know that just a few psukim beforehand, Yaakov Avinu again came over to Lavan, like we were saying in the beginning, and said to him, I want to leave. And Lavan says to him, Nichashti, I know that everything I have is because of you, Yaakov, because HaKadosh Baruch Hu has blessed me because of you. So I want to continue being blessed. So why don't you stay here and work for me? Lavan knows that. Lavan knows that so well that he makes the deal with Yaakov. But Yaakov knows who Lavan is. He knows what a deal with Lavan is, as we see later when he talks to Rachel and Leah. He says to him that he changed his salary as Seret Monim, tenfold. So many times did Lavan trick him and deceive him and cheat him in business. Yaakov knows very well who Lavan is. And he went into that deal knowing who Lavan is. How did he go into that deal? Because he knows that everything is from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Like he tells Rachel and Leah that the whole thing he did with the Nekudim, Pluim, with the different types of patterns on the sheep and on the lamb is all because HaKadosh Baruch Hu told him to do so. So Yaakov Avinu knows that it doesn't matter how much Lavan tries to trick him, in the end of the day, everything is from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, so he's not worried. However, once the sons of Lavan, once the next generation starts talking, not about the wealth, but about Yaakov, they're starting to talk about Yaakov being a bad person, not about trying to deceive him in business, but taking a step back and saying, hold on a second, he is stealing from us. He's taking everything from us. Yaakov knows that it's not about that wealth. It's not about the money. It's not about the possessions. It's not about the different objects that they want. It's not about the items, but it's about this hatred of the next generation. The same hatred that we see later on in Yetziat Mitzrayim by the Dor Asher Lo Yada et Yosef, the new generation that didn't know Yosef, that doesn't know the good that Joseph brought into Egypt, that don't recognize that good because they're fueled by hatred. They're fueled by their anti-Semitism, and everything else is just a cover-up for that anti-Semitism. Everything else is just some kind of usage. They're using that reason, but the real reason, the deep-rooted reason, is their hatred to Yaakov, is their hatred to Am Yisrael. And based on this next generation, the Bnei Lavan, the Dor Asher Lo Yada et Yosef, they take this to Lavan and they start telling him, look what Yaakov is doing. And then Yaakov notices that Bnei Lavan enam ketmol shilshom. I know who Lavan is. He's a deceiver. He's a terrible human being. He tricked me so many times. But even me now today, even with knowing that, something changed. Something is different. This time the language is a very, very different language. This time it's not only about business. It's not about him trying to take money from me. There's something way much deeper than this. There's a hatred over there that you just can't ignore. And he goes to Rachel and Leah and he takes them to the field. And this is very interesting because Rachel and Leah, because besides the fact that Rachel and Leah are his wives, they're also the daughters of Lavan. So then you have Bnei Lavan against the daughters of Lavan. And Yaakov tells them, listen, you know your father. I know your father. How many times did he trick me? How many things did he try to do? But HaKadosh Baruch Hu has always been there to help me and to save me. And on this, tell him, Rachel and Leah, yes, we know we have no relationship with him. Nochriot, we are to him. We are like foreigners to him, like we talked about last year. We are disconnected from him. We have no attachment to him. We want nothing to do with him. We understand that everything you have, that we have, is from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and we're ready to go back to Eretz Yisrael with everything HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave us, and we don't have to feel guilty about this because we know, again, that it's all a cover-up for the hatred. The fact that they're going to chase us and going to want to hurt us is not because the wealth we made, is not because what was going on here, but because the hatred of Bnei Lavan to us. This is maybe what's going on over there between Yaakov and Lavan, between Yaakov and Bnei Lavan. We talked about in the past also the fact Pnei Lavan, the face of Lavan, the word Pnei in Hebrew is panim, is an inside. Yaakov doesn't only see the face of Lavan, he sees the inside of Lavan. He understands that something has changed. Even with this biggest deceiver, even with this biggest Ramai, it's not about the Ramaut in business anymore. It's not only about that level, but there's something way much deeper, rooted on a different level. The next generation has fed into this education, grew up based on this education of this hatred. There's something much more evil going on over here. It's not something that can be solved by making an agreement for giving them back X amount of money, by giving them some percentage of what Yaakov made, or even giving them everything Yaakov made. That's not going to solve it. The problem here is something much deeper. It's the hatred to Am Yisrael. It's the hatred to Yaakov Avinu. This is what the story here is about. This is why the Torah brings all these three reasonings, because it's all one. It's to tell us everything is from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. It was never about the wealth. It was never about the honor. It's about this deep-rooted anti-Semitism. This is what's going on over here. This is what Yaakov Avinu understands, tells to Rachel and Leah, and this is what we should understand today.
Yeah, exactly. And you know what? When we see later on, when Lavan does chase Yaakov. And he goes and he searches everything he has and so on. And finally, Yaakov spills it out. He says, you know what you've been doing to me for years and years and years. But he ends with one sentence. And if we look at what his punchline is, and also what Lavan's response is, we see exactly these two worlds. We see exactly this battle. Yaakov says, Lulei Elohei Avdi, Elohei Abraham upachad Yitzchak hayali. If Hashem wasn't with me, ki ata rekam shilachtani, you would have sent me without anything. The only reason I have something is because God was with me, not because anything you did. I would go out with zero, not some, not less, zero. Et yoni vet yegia kapai, everything I did you didn't see. Ra Elohim vayochach emesh. The reason he revealed himself to you yesterday was to prove to you this point. Everything I have is from him. But what does Lavan respond? Vayan Lavan vayomar, habanot bnotai, habanim banai, your girls are mine, your boys are mine, hatzon tzodi, everything you have, kol asher ata roeh lihu, everything you have is mine. Lavan is still stuck in that. And even though we know that he was the one who realized that everything he had was from Yaakov, that was when Yaakov was weak. Now that Yaakov suddenly has all this and is strong and is powerful, suddenly everything he has, that's actually mine. That's Lavan and Yaakov, who recognize that no matter what he's going to say, no matter what he's going to leave, no matter what he does, this is where Lavan's going to be. And he makes that statement exactly the opposite. I would have nothing if it was up to you. Everything I have is only from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Yaakov is not only going home. Yaakov is going home with everything that HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave him as he promised him. And he's going back to Beit El, where he promised and vowed he would return with everything he got from HaKadosh Baruch Hu.
Very good, very good. Exactly. You know, especially with what's going on today, sometimes it's easy to get confused or not realize what the real story is about. What is the real reasoning behind things? Time and time again, every week, the Torah reminds us how relevant the Torah's words are for us today, for what's going on in today's life with the evil that we are battling. And we must not forget it, must not forget what this battle is really about, what's going on over here. And as we keep on saying every single week, we have one job, and that is to add good into the world and to fight this evil and to make sure that we are working hard and making the world a better place. Shkoyach Yitzi.
Shkoyach Tuvia, Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom, and Eretz Yisrael. We'll talk again next week.